Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and tonight I'm joined by Chris McAway, and we are here to discuss Celtic 1, Ajax, losing count 5.
Five, I think, yeah.
Poor second half performance. First half, I think at half time we gave the Celtic side the plaudits they deserved. Listen, at the same time, Chris, if we're going to be given plaudits out for beating Newcastle in a pre-season friendly, then we're going to have to try and strip back what went wrong in that, particularly in that second half there, because that was a really poor performance. Some real quality, you've got to say, in terms of the strikes that Ajax scored. But yeah, let's try and strip it back. Where did it all go wrong in that second half for you, Chris?
Yeah, the second half started, I think that's where it went wrong. If the game was 45 minutes, I'd have been quite satisfied with the performance. Yeah, look, again, let's put it in context as a pre-season friendly, but this is getting close to the start of the season, so we're expecting us to be playing close to a level that we will start the season, any future recruits aside. I think the changes upset the balance. I think the change of taking Tierney off, and again, this is no shade on Inamura, but you saw the drop in quality when Tierney comes off. Tierney is more than just a player playing in a position for me. He is a leader in that team. I thought the first half demonstrated that with his ability to come into the box and help out, and I don't think that was quite there. Carter Vickers is not fit. I mean, CCV is just not fit. He was so rusty out there. His play was slow. It was sloppy at times. Can allow for that given he's been injured, but it does present us with a concern heading into the start of the season. With that said, I don't want to put a positive element on that, and that Dane Murray in the first half I thought was excellent. So I'm more confident that we have a potential capable deputy in Dane Murray. So I think there's a positive element to come there. We made a few more changes throughout the second half, but we never seemed to really regain momentum. And I think when Ajax got the second goal and then third goal, I think they just stepped up a level. They had that confidence, and we looked a bit fragile. Certain players that came in, I think, could have done better, could have done more to assert themselves in the time they were given, particularly players who are first team established. I think Engels, to an extent, McCowan, I think could have done a bit better. And I've already mentioned Carter Vickers. Interestingly enough, I do want to pick out one player from the first half that I thought played pretty well, and I thought that was Adam Idah. In the first half, I thought he had one of his best performances in the pre-season. Not in terms of his goal scoring, but I thought the way he contributed to the counter-attack, coming deep, winning the ball, playing it off to the wings, and allowing us to move forward. Now, the trade-off on that is when he's doing that, obviously he's then got to get himself up and get into the box as the striker. So there is a trade-off to having that. But second half, we just could not get the, those opportunities for Idah just disappeared. We were not fluid. We were not fluent at all in our play. Couldn't really seem to get a grip of the game at all, and we were sloppy. There were sloppy moments. I think the pass from CCV out to Nygren, who we praised heavily in the first half, and then he overhits his pass back. It bypasses Carmack, and then obviously Scales has a reactive swipe at it, plays it into the path of the Ajax player, and it goes in. So, yeah, we were kind of architects of our own demise, I think, in that second half largely. But what it did highlight is we need recruits big time.
It comes into quality. I know, that could create a situation where, if you've got signings that you're bringing in who are untested and everything else, and you want them to bed into your team by next month, by a European Championship qualifier, then you're risking it. You're playing Russian roulette. It's not on the back of a 5-1 pre-season friendly defeat that we're saying that. We've been saying it all summer. In fact, we've been saying it every transfer window since probably Ange Postecoglou, I think, because we got into a good rhythm with the transfers where we were strengthening rather than bringing in the quality because we needed it. We were strengthening and we were doing it in advance. And now it's almost like as though we're going back to the Wallace and Gromit with the dogs on the train track. and he's laying the tracks as it's hurtling along because we need to get it right for next month. We're back at that stage. I'm going to bring in as many comments as possible. There will be no knee-jerk reaction. I've been doing matches on here long enough to learn that that's not the way to go, but we can't ignore the facts. And I think when you're looking at individual goals, and we've covered some heavy defeats on Acsom, the worst one being, of course, Borussia Dortmund 7-1. That was a really tough one to kind of analyse after the game because there's so much wrong with the performance, Chris. You try to break it down. You could look at each individual goal and say, how can we stop that? But I just think collectively you've got to take it. The one player that I have championed for an entire year, Annie Engels, at half-time, we're talking about Nygren and how well he's been playing. And I did think over the piece Nygren had a good game. Yes. He comes off and Engels then comes into the play, and you look at him and think, right, what we need from you now is a reaction. We need a reaction from you because he played well against Newcastle, right? So now he's on the bench. It's not like he's been dropped. It's pre-season. Everybody's got to get a certain amount of minutes in the legs and all that stuff, to use the cliche. But Engels comes on tonight, and I just think he's kind of going through the motions. Now, what I mean by that is goal number 4 and goal number 5 for Ajax. I want you to fight and bust a gut to close that angle and get into the space. Particularly the fifth one, by the way. Particularly the fifth one. Watch it back. Engels has got to do more for me. And he's a player that I rate highly. He's a player that I'm not willing to write off at this stage. But just things like that, right? 2 goals. Make sure that you don't let them get the shot in, Chris. Now, he's young. I've used all the reasoning and all the excuses under the sun in the last year. But that's just something that comes down to aggression. Be aggressive. Close them down. Take one for the team if you have to, but make sure you don't get the shot in. It's the same as if you're a fullback. Make sure they don't get the cross in, right?
Yes.
In that scenario, when you're the furthest, but you're the deepest midfield player, make sure that you get out to them and be aggressive with it. Didn't see enough aggression for him, unfortunately.
No, and we spoke at halftime about Yang, for example, and we spoke about, there's elements of his game which are raw. What we do like about him is the attitude, right? It's the attitude and the work ethic and the fact he's showing a little bit more aggression. Engels, like many players, will lose the support of the fans. Those who are very much on his side, he will lose the support of his fans if he doesn't show the right attitude on the park. You can talk about ability all you want, right? We've lauded Engels' ability, but the absolute minimum I think we as Celtic fans look for is the right attitude, the right work ethic, the never say die kind of attitude on the park. When the chips are down, that's when you need it more than anything. You don't need the fancy flicks or the sort of innovative play. What you want is do the simple things well, do the basics well, and show that fighting spirit, show the kind of attitude that's always embodied the great Celtic players. And yeah, I agree with you. I thought when Engels came on, I thought when a couple of other players came on as well, they didn't really show that. It was kind of like the down tools to an extent. And I would never accuse a player of doing that, but the optics would appear that way. They weren't busting a gut to try and get in there and block the play. They weren't busting a gut and taking responsibility as senior players to try and drive us back into this match. So that's a concern. I would agree that is a concern. I think. There was also a drop in quality with some of the substitutes coming on as well, which I think highlights a need to really get a few recruits in. As I say, we've spoken about players like Idah, very divisive at the moment. We've spoken about Yang, very divisive. Players. Some fans think he's not not good enough. Some of us can see that he's on an upward trajectory. But I think what is clear is if we start the season, and particularly if we get to the point where we're heading into the Champions League qualifier, and Yang's on the wing, and Idah's our number 1 choice striker, and Engels is our first choice midfielder, I think there'll be a lot of unrest within the supporters, and I would share that.
Well, I think when you're looking at the 2 biggies, you're looking at Idah and Engels. They will be part of our plans this season. There is no doubt about that. If we qualify for the Champions League, those 2 guys, if you look at last season, those 2 guys contributed massively to the Champions League success and the progress. So they will They will. So you're going to be massively disappointed because they will definitely be first choices in Champions League next season.
But we need options. We need the point I'm making is we need Idah, for me, has never up until this point been the first choice striker for Celtic. We had Kyogo, he was the first choice striker. Idah had the opportunity to step up, couldn't quite do it, and Maeda found himself in that position and did exceptionally well. The amount of comments I've seen tonight saying, why is Maeda not our first choice striker? And I echo that. I think Maeda is better as a striker than he is in the wing. Obviously, the manager disagrees. Idah, for me, is a decent player, but he's not done enough for me to establish himself as a first choice striker. I praised him for his first half performance today. I thought he did a job that he is very good at and had shades of when he played against Kilmarnock a couple of seasons back and turned the game. Coming deep, holding the ball up, bringing other players into play, allowing them to go forward. As I said earlier, the trade-off with that is who's then up top to receive the cross, the goal. So it doesn't necessarily work that well in this system. He almost needs a partner up there. He almost needs somebody to play off him. A little bit like we Sutton used to play with Larson, or you see Matt O'Reilly playing with Kyogo and that kind of thing. So that's what I would expect from Adam Idah. That's how I think you get the best out of him. But at the moment, we need somebody up there that's reliable on a consistent basis, and Idah has not shown that yet for us. And again, I'm not overreacting. I appreciate it's pre-season, but we're getting very, very close to the start of the season. We're getting very close to what is at this point the biggest game in our season, which is going to be the Champions League qualifier. And we really need these players to show that they are ready to make the step up in that occasion.
Well, you're right, and I think the reason that Idah is indeed the first choice striker is because we have no other left wingers.
It's by default at the moment. There's
no other left wingers. Maeda has to play on the left, and
that's the problem. We've got players in positions by default because there is no alternative option, and that's a failure of recruitment at this point.
Yes, it is. And you know what? You can have new people coming in to that recruitment setup, Chris. You can have the football doctor coming in and giving presentations and having a collection of stylish hats. But there is a point during that process where that particular player that's been identified as fitting a system or fitting a profile that we're looking for still has to go to the same people to do the deal. Right. So in terms of that side of things, nothing's changed. And in actual fact, when you go back, let's go back a few seasons to when Ange called out the club for being too slow at doing the deals and letting the deals, and he called them out. And then we started doing deals a bit quicker. And what's changed since then? Well, we've got a new CEO. So Don Mackay was replaced with Michael Nicholson, but the people surrounding Michael Nicholson are the same people who are doing the business for Celtic. So you could have the best scouting department on the planet identifying players. Still got to go out and get the deals done. Yeah. And my concern is this. Was it all paper talk, Fitzgarden, or were we interested in him? I'd love to know, because I'll tell you something, that link, that speculation, that ran for, transfer window after transfer window, after transfer window. Yep. Did we fail to get the deal done? Could we not get the deal done? And this is the concern that starts at this point to be ramped up in the pressure cooker that the board are now in. It will be ramped up, not because of a bounce game, a pre-season game and a poor result, but because the fans are watching a lot of the same faces, making the same kind of mistakes. And we have made in this transfer window alone a profit, if you chuck in the Frimpong money, of more than 20 million quid. And I think it's a case of, yes, you will be able to pick up bargains. I think Nygren he gave away a goal tonight, but Nygren was brilliant up until a certain point tonight. And he has been brilliant in the games that he's played so far for Celtic. And I think it'll be a very shrewd purchase for Celtic. And you will get bargains, but we also need to get quality. And with that comes often a transfer fee that we balk at. We absolutely do, Chris, and we do that as a football club. I'm going to bring in a lot of comments because it is about the views of those watching alongside us this evening. So there we go. The urban culture comes in to say, right, if we're going to pull some positives, let's have a look at Nygren's performance in the first half particularly. And he was a big positive for me. That's followed up, of course, by Frank that says he gave away a goal. He did. But other than that moment, Frank, I think Nygren has looked the part. He looked the part tonight. Chris, you were talking about his ability to just retain possession. He doesn't give the ball away. By the way, right, Rio Tati, in the second half, gave the ball away 4 times in the first 10 minutes. Gave the ball away. Now, I know he followed that up by winning the ball back a couple of times, etc. But 4 times in the first 10 minutes. Poor possession. Didn't see that from Nygren in his performance. When he gives the ball away, we lose a goal. But when you're looking at the finishing, when you're looking at that element of quality, when you're looking at players that Ajax are bringing through, and they've got a tradition of doing this and bringing real quality through, sometimes you've got to say, you know what, those last 2 goals were tremendous. They were brilliant finishes. But as a Celtic fan, I'm always looking at how could we prevent it. Sometimes you go to the previous passage you play, Chris. When did we lose the ball? And it's not about a blame game. It's just trying to cut these things out. But Nygren, for me, let's stick to the positive side of that point. Nygren has been, so far, a very good player. We've not had a competitive minute of football played by him, but he is looking the part, Chris.
He doesn't look out of place. I think that's he looks a natural fit in that Celtic midfield. I think he offers far more positive based on what we've seen than anything negative. I think the goal that we lost, yes, the final sort of ball into our box comes from Nygren, and it wasn't helped by what I think was quite a poor ball from Carter Vickers to him. Now, Carter Vickers can see the play in front of him. Nygren has his back to the play behind him at that point, and he's got the pace. Wrong. It can happen. The problem is that we've got aspirations of going into a competition where if you do make those sort of mistakes, you will get punished, right? And we've seen it time and time again in the Champions League. So look, if he's going to do it, I'm glad he done it in a relatively meaningless pre-season game. And I think, as I say, throughout that first half, and indeed the first few minutes of the second half, where he plays a decent ball into Hatate and nearly gets us back into the game, I think he demonstrates that he's got very good vision, that he's composed on the ball, he's got great ball retention. He doesn't waste possession very often, as far as I can tell, but he has got that ability to find that pass that will open up defences. So I think he's an absolute upgrade on our midfield. So he's been a great signing so far from me. But you're right. Keep it in context. It's pre-season. Let's see again. To go back to the old phrase, can he do it on a rainy evening in Dingwall? But I've got confidence in that player that he is going to be a very, very good player for us based on what we're seeing. So yeah, I think Nygren has been a bright light in every appearance so far in pre-season.
Yeah, he definitely has. Jean-Paul II, Chris, says, second half mince, and we need better players in. Yeah, we do. We do need better players in.
I would agree with that.
My frustration is always, why do we always look as though, it's almost like rebuilding something? Why not just continually bring in quality? Every window, bring in quality. You hear all the cliches, coming out the window stronger than you've gone into it and all that. Get the business done. I use Fitzgarden because it was just like link after link after link to that player, Chris. He's been replaced by Balikwisha by the looks of it.
I was going to say, there's parallels there, because now it seems to have moved on to Balikwisha, and it's just like, are we going to sign him? Are we not? Are we even interested in him? But it's just that it's a continual, yes, we are, no, we're not, player wants to come. Club's not, it's like, just get the deal done. We need the player, just get it done. Don't overpay by any means, but don't lowball just for the sake of saving a few quid. The risk of not having the requisite quality in for the Champions League, and God forbid we don't get through that game, the loss of that is so much more than paying an extra 1 or 2 million to get a player who will give us that requisite quality.
Well, I'm going to use some of these quotes before I get back into the comment section. This was from Brendan Rodgers earlier on today. And as a football club, we aim to improve every season. So again, big part of that obviously is bringing in better quality during your transfer windows. And then he's looking at consistently challenging in Europe. He felt that we challenged last season. He wants to do that on a consistent basis. Again, if we go into a game like tonight in the Champions League with that particular group of players, Chris, this kind of result is inevitable. This is what we're saying. Yes, it's a pre-season, but we're not. We're absolutely not. You can never stand still. That's another thing that Brendan says. So all the messages that, you know what I mean, he's putting them out there. He's putting them out there, and hopefully they're being picked up by the board. We still have some work to do, he says. It's clear where our gaps are in our front line. See, this is what I find quite interesting as well, where we need support. All right. And I'm very confident we'll be able to do that before the market finishes. Well, I hope we do, because, like I say, you go into a game against a real quality opponent in the Champions League, Chris, they can put you to the sword. You know, one little slack pass, they will put you to the sword. And this is where you get concerned, because we know that, you know, you flip a season on that qualification for the Champions League. It's of the utmost importance. Your rainy day fund, it's almost as if you're creating the rainy day if you don't get into the Champions League. And and it's almost like we're banging on about this constantly, not just this season, last season, the season before that. And I hope that we're not the architects of our own misfortune. Jungle Lion, that Newcastle result was the worst thing to happen to this board. Listen, the board are out of touch. I mean, I've been doing a lot of work on this weekend's episode for This Is Acsom, and that is a completely different scenario. That is when we wanted the board out for different reasons entirely. But I was looking at the board back then. I was looking at the board now, and back then it got to the point, Chris, where even if you were a younger kind of Celtic fan, you knew the boardroom like you knew the starting 11. You knew all their name, and you're thinking, I'd rather not know. I just would rather they did a great job and you didn't have to know. But when you look at this boardroom that we've got now, I tell you something, right? That the reason we knew the last guys' names was because they were all as bad as each other. This time round, some of them are just absolutely anonymous. They're absolutely anonymous in this Celtic board. You think, what are you bringing to the party here, right? And you know, the chief advisor financially is Chris Mackay. You know, the chief executive officer is Michael Nicholson. You know, the chairman, of course, is Peter Lowell. And then you start thinking, right, what's everybody else doing? You know, what else? What else are they bringing to the table in terms of entrepreneurial flair, new ideas, diversity? I don't see it. I don't see it.
Yeah, we don't seem to be progressive in many areas of the football club and the football operation. It's difficult because we don't have insight into what the decision-making process is. We don't have insight into the parameters that they set around recruitment. You know, we don't know what restrictions certain personnel are working under. So it's difficult to make an informed analysis. But what we can do is we can base it on the results and what information is available to us, right, and the performance. So we look at the fact that we are 10 days away from the start of the new season. We know that a couple of games in, we're going to face a Champions League qualifier that could make or break our season, our ability to continue progressing both financially and from a football operation standpoint. So on that basis, at the moment, you know, I watched the team tonight and I think that team's not ready. You know, we have massive gaps in our, in key positions. The wings is a key one. We have, gaps at centre, at central defence. We have, deficiencies in certain areas of the park. We have, players who don't look like they're ready for the challenge. We don't have any firm links in terms of recruitment at the moment. We have, links that have been going on for best part of the entire window and prior to that. So it's frustrating from a fan's standpoint, and because of that, that's how we make the assertion that we do, that the board are not making the right decisions. That may be unfair, as I say, because we don't have the informed position, and we've obviously given praise to the signing of players like Migren, but it's frustrating from a purist supporter point of view, because what you want to see is the good work that the board, and I'm sure they do plenty of it, right? But you want to see the good work that the board is potentially performing reflected on the park, and we're not seeing that yet.
Well, this is the thing, because there is definitely a need to get the job done and get it done quickly, Chris. We seem to be very good at selling players, getting people off the wage bill. And as fans, you're looking at the constant barrage of pleas for more spend. And what I'm talking about is by 11 o'clock this morning, there had been 5 tweets from the official Celtic Twitter page, X. 5 merchandise tweets alone. So it's like, right, we're all in. And now it's time for you guys to get it all in and bring us the quality that we require to go into the Champions League proper and to actually compete and to improve and progress. Stephen Broadley, you can't keep signing your best players and sign projects, selling your best players.
Selling your best players there, yeah.
Well, that's what we do, Stephen. And generally speaking, we sell two. We generally sell two every single season, not always in the summer transfer window, but last season it was Matt O'Reilly and Kyogo, of course. Patrick James Simpson, first quality team we faced who wanted it, and it shows even for a friendly. Yes, I did see Paul the Tim in the crowd as well, wearing his Celtic away jersey. Young number 3 bullied Idah all game.
Bowman, I think it was. He's a quality young player. He's going to go right to the top, I have to say. And that strike was incredible. I disagree with the fact he bullied Idah all game. I thought the first half there were occasions where Idah had to come deep, which I don't necessarily like. Right, but I think in the context of how we were counter-attacking and the transition from back to front, Idah was coming deep and he was winning he was getting first to the ball and he was laying it off to the side. It was either going to Yang or it was going out to Idah, and that led to some of our best attacks. But as I say, the trade-off with that, and this is where I think it sort of fails a little bit in that system, and this is just my opinion, is that if Idah's doing that, who's there to then receive the subsequent pass or the cross from the wingers? You know, it's a hell of a lot to put on a striker. So look, I'm perfectly happy to criticise Idah when I think he's played badly. For the first half, I thought he did a job relatively well in terms of how he had to play. But I agree, I would like to see Idah more in the box, on the end of crosses, putting the ball on the net. That's what we paid, the amount we paid for him to do. As I say, I always view Idah as a plan B striker. The problem is that being a plan B striker means that you need to have a pretty good plan A striker, and we don't have one at the moment.
No, we don't, unless we get another left winger and we can bring Maeda back into the discussion. Obviously, it would have been interesting tonight to see Shin Yamada. We know that he pulled up before the game and he didn't feature. That was unfortunate. But when we look at the midfield as well, Chris, you know, we were saying before the game, 6 into 3. You know, we've got 6 midfielders vying for 3 jerseys. It was pointed out that McGregor is virtually guaranteed a jersey, and I get that. But the question still remains, despite the fact that there are different qualities in there, there's different types of players within the 6 midfield players. Is there enough physicality? Is that going to become another? Because we're not going to sign another midfielder at this stage when we definitely need a striker. We definitely need 1 or 2 wingers. We potentially need another left-sided centre-half. Some people might say that we need another right-sided centre-half. I mean, how much games will we miss by CCV this season through injury? By the way, another positive, I think, is the performance of Dane Murray tonight.
Yes, I said it.
Let's not forget the performance. So, yeah, there's a lot more positions, Chris. My point is there's a lot more positions before you're going to come back to the midfield area. Yet, that question remains. Do we have the physicality we need in that area of the park?
It feels like we've been asking for that ever since Wanyama left. I would agree. I mean, I think we've added an element we didn't have with Nygren, which is the creativity and the composure going forward. And I think Nygren is great at that. I look at a player like Engels and I think, right, that's not your role. Your role is playing deep, using your physicality. He's a big guy. You know, he's a big, solid boy. And, you know, he's definitely got good ability. I'm looking at him and thinking, make the number 6 your own. I know there's a lot of people disagree and think he's better going forward. I personally, and it's just a personal opinion, I think he does his best work from deep. But he'll only do his best work from deep if he shows the attitude, which, as you rightly pointed out, he didn't really show today. But I think he's tailor-made for playing in that number 6 role, playing deep, you know, patrolling that defensive midfield area, and then spreading the play out a little bit like Neil Lennon used to do. You know, and don't worry so much about the attacking side, right? There's other players in front of you that can do that. But we need someone that can utilise their physicality. And at the moment, Engels, for all his physical stature, doesn't seem to have that ability to really bully other players. And that's what we're missing. We're missing someone that can bully the opposition players in that position.
Yeah, we need the aggression. We have been saying that, Chris. We need the aggression from him, just like we need it from Big Idah. We need it from Trusty as well. Another player that I don't think developed in season 2 the way we would have expected was Paulo Bernardo. I don't think, having seen him when he was on loan, I mean, the only guy that gets a pass actually from that summer transfer window 2 years ago is Paulo Bernardo. But when he was on loan, I think we got more of a performance out of him than last season. And so, all the focus is on the performance in Nygren. It's on, whether or not Engels is going to live up to the billing and all this kind of stuff. Bernardo, I still think there's a question around him. This is a big season for Bernardo. There's a lot of players that would say that about. Some great comments coming in, and I'm keen to get a few up before we finish for tonight. Ryan T, there's a bit of frustration. Bad showing even for a friendly. Yeah, you're right, Ryan. Absolutely right. And I'll tell you something. As I say, if we're going to give praise for the 4-0 against Newcastle, we need to pinpoint the negatives tonight. Deck, the loss was a wake-up call to the board, hopefully. Was it, though? That's the thing. I sometimes feel there's a complacency amongst a lot of the members of the board where, I remember, and it's changed slightly, not a great deal, from the previous chairman, who Ian Bankier, prior to Peter Lovell, and some of the comments he made about, we can't compete at this level. And I remember hearing that and thinking to myself, that's a shocking indictment of the attitude and the culture that was prevalent within the boardroom at that time. But the issue that I've got with that is there's not been a great deal of change since then in terms of personnel. That's what I'm getting. I know that Brian Rose came in, and I think, on paper, it certainly looks as though he is a guy that's got initiative and entrepreneurial skills and this kind of thing. And I thought that was a really good appointment, but we need more of that. We need to get more kind of forward-thinking individuals, bold individuals in that boardroom, Chris.
I think so. Yeah, we keep going back to this, the rainy day fund. There's been risk averse, and then there's just been riskophobic at the moment. And the fact is, we will not progress as a football club unless we take an element of calculated risk, right? And calculated risk means that you don't take risk that's going to put you, in a dangerous financial position like our old rivals did. But what it's about is saying, okay, we have a strategy where we will invest in the playing squad with a long-term objective of continuing to generate, sustainable revenue through the Champions League. But to do that, we have to make sure that the team's equipped to get to the Champions League and to make progress in the Champions League, right? So that means what is this rainy day that they're worried about? I mean, unless they
not qualifying for the Champions League is the rainy day,
which is so you see the conundrum here, right? You see the paradox. It doesn't work. The fact is that if the Champions League entry is your key long-term, or let's even just say key seasonal objective, right? Your seasonal objective is to get into the Champions League. Anything that happens after that is a bonus, right? That's maybe the board mindset, not mine. I want to progress, but that's maybe what the board mindset is let's make sure we get the Champions League. Well, why on earth are you not equipping the team to give you the best possible chance to get into the Champions League? Because no fan, I believe, that watched that match tonight would feel confident if we lined up like that in that Champions League qualifier, irrespective of who we're playing. I don't think anyone would feel fully confident we would qualify. No,
you're right, Chris. And this is the thing as well, going back to the recruitment side of it. What you need to do is and this is, again, when I'm speaking to anybody who's been involved with Celtic, I'm always asking Chris about the recruitment element. We had Peter Grant as a guest fairly recently, and I'm talking to him about how recruitment worked when he was there with Tony Mowbray, for example. And these are the types of things that you try and get a better understanding of. How does this work? And Mialby did the same. He gave us an insight into how it was working when Neil Lennon was in charge first time round. And so I've got absolutely no doubt whatsoever that if Brendan Rodgers has identified that we need, let's say, a winger who can play on the left and the right, let's just say, I mean, imagine there was one of them kicking about. Right, there's a list, and on that list, you have your top target, and then it starts working its way down. And then your top target, though, Chris, the thing with the top target, your top target is going to cost what we were paying kind of last pre-season. It's going to cost a £10 million ballpark. Our top target isn't a £25 million player. So your top target is obviously already cut out the guys of that level of quality. Yeah. And I just feel sometimes that we are buying the fourth or the fifth on that list. And that's where I have an issue, because at this moment in time, if you say, right, what's your priorities? Right, we need a winger, right? We are crying out for a winger on the right-hand side. I would say also on the left-hand side, because that frees up Idah. You get two players for the price of one out of him, because you can play centre-forward. We need a centre-forward starter. One for now, to use Brendan's language, not one for later. And I still think, looking at that, I've got concerns about the central defensive area. So who's your top targets? What would it cost you in transfer fees? Probably 30 million quid. Or last season, we might have got our second choice defender. Maybe Trusty was our second choice defender. That's why it cost us slightly less. Well, £30 million, Chris. A club like Celtic, right? It's hardly as if you're gambling. You know, it's not that you're gambling the family China on it. It's we've got the money. Before we go into this transfer window, we've already got that money available. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to be a wee bit bolder. It's not being, you know what, we're not putting the club at risk by going out and doing this. We're actually giving ourselves a better chance of getting through this qualifier.
Yeah. Well, it's two-player sales, right? And you spoke earlier that our typical model is we sell two players. Two of our players move on and we generate great profits. 30 million is less than two-player sales for me because we've got a great record of selling a couple of players for 20, 25 million in the last couple of seasons. So you're almost there with that. You cultivate these great players, you develop them, you sell them on. Personally, I'd rather keep the best players at the club. I think you build around them, but if you can't keep them, you sell them at a profit. That model actually works, but it only works if you reinvest the bulk of that amount back into the playing squad, because you cannot replace what you lose with Kyogo in terms of goals. You cannot replace what you lose in terms of assists and goals, in terms of Kun. You cannot replace, okay, it's unfortunate, it's an injury, but you cannot replace the creativity of a Jota by going to project players. That's a hugely risk strategy from what we've already said is a very risk-averse board. So it doesn't make... There's so many contradictions in what the so-called strategy is. And it's frightening for me because surely, to goodness, the amount of money we've had from Nicholas Kuhn and the amount of money we've had from the Frimpong deal should be enough to get at least two players of the requisite quality to get us through the Champions League qualifier.
Yeah, I mean, I think what will happen, Chris, is we'll have a look at this season's spend, and then we can compare it to last season's summer spend, and then you can then say, well, did we show as much as or more ambition than we did last season? And I think that, you know, we can do that at the end of the window, and people are saying there's plenty of time. And I've made the point, you know, we signed Trusty halfway through August, and we signed Engels and Idah at the end of August. But at the same time, you know, the caveat to that is we didn't have a qualifier last season. Our first competitive game is against St Mirren in 10 days' time. Celtic will now play Ally on Saturday night when I'm hosting the premiere of Ange and the Boss. So hopefully we can get cover for the game. We will be covering it by hook or by crook. We will be covering that, even if I need to do it myself in the middle of a large audience. We will cover the game. But thanks every single person for getting involved. Lots of comments coming through, well over 3,000. And it just shows you, Chris, that even friendlies get people annoyed, angry, frustrated, disappointed. All of these emotions come into play because there's over 3,200 people watching the post-match this evening. There's often league games. There's often league games that we don't get this amount of people tuning in for. So thanks everybody for getting involved. We will be back as always at 12:30 tomorrow. Thank you once again, Chris McElwain, Double D, for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.